Hello and welcome to PartlyCloudy.tv. Today we're going to discuss the newly released AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam, how it differs from the old exam, and exactly what you need to know before you take it. It's a tale of two exams today on PartlyCloudy.tv. So why a new exam? So the first question that everyone seems to have is, why is there a new exam? Why didn't they just upgrade the existing exam? The answer to this question is actually pretty simple. The existing exam was released 4 years ago, and quite a bit has changed since its release. Quite a few new services have been released. Amazon continues to add new services at a feverishly fast pace across all of the platform offerings of AWS. Existing services have had numerous feature upgrades and improvements. These include everything from new EC2 instance types, changes to storage classifications, and the ability to utilize first in, first out queue services, just to name a few. It's important to remember that services are constantly being upgraded and improved in AWS. Best practices have evolved and matured. Remember, along with the release of new services and the improvements of others, architectural best practices will continue to evolve based on changes to the overall environment. And possibly most importantly, the exam has been redesigned to better reflect the pillars of the well-architected framework. As we will be discussing shortly, the previous exam focused on 4 pillars. With the release of the new exam, Amazon has updated the exam blueprint to better reflect the pillars of the framework as it has evolved over time. So let's get into some details about the exam. The new AWS Certified Solutions Architect exam was released in February of 2018. However, the previous exam will still be available until August of 2018. If you've already scheduled the exam, stay on course. There's no need to take the new exam right away. Either exam qualifies the candidate for the CSA certification for 2 years. As with all AWS exams, you will need to recertify after 2 years, which means that when you recertify, you will most definitely be taking the new exam. Existing certifications are not affected by the new exam release. If you already hold the CSA certificate, it is valid until it needs to be renewed. Effective immediately, the new exam will be listed as AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate, released February of 2018 in the PSI registration system. If you're going to be registering for the exam soon, meaning the spring or summer of 2018, make sure that you select the appropriate exam. The previous version of the exam is still listed for registration until August of this year, so pay special attention to which one you select. Exams are scored from 100 to 1,000 with a minimum passing score of 720. Your score shows how you performed on the exam as a whole and whether or not you passed. Once your exam is complete, you will receive a score report. This will contain a table of classifications of your performance at each section level. This information is designed to provide general feedback concerning your exam performance and will highlight your strengths and weaknesses. Each section of the exam has a specific weighting, so some sections will have more questions than others. Next, let's discuss some of the recommended knowledge for this certification. What makes the perfect exam candidate? Before taking the exam, Amazon recommends that you have a certain level of knowledge about AWS. The perfect candidate should have 1 year of hands-on experience designing available, cost-efficient, fault-tolerant, and scalable distributed systems on Amazon Web Services. You should have hands-on experience using compute, networking, storage, and database AWS services. Know your core services for AWS. These include EC2, S3, EBS, VPCs, and RDS. You don't need to be a networking specialist or a DBA, but you should at least have enough knowledge to know what the services do and how are they to be used when designing an architecture. Have hands-on experience with AWS deployment and management services. This would include having knowledge of CloudWatch, CloudTrail, Elastic Beanstalk, and CloudFormation, to name a few. Have the ability to identify and define technical requirements for an AWS-based application. Again, it's critical that you understand the different AWS services and what they can provide to your application. Have the ability to identify which AWS services meet a given technical requirement. Understand the different services of AWS and what capabilities they can provide. Have knowledge of the recommended best practices for building secure and reliable applications on the AWS platform. This knowledge area should include designing for resiliency and fault tolerance. Have an understanding of the basic architectural principles of building on the AWS cloud. Have an understanding of the AWS global infrastructure. Know the differences and the capabilities of AWS regions versus availability zones. Understand the scope of the service offerings in each. Have an understanding of network technologies as they relate to AWS. Have an understanding of VPCs, subnets, network interfaces, and IP addressing. Have an understanding of security features and tools that AWS provides and how they relate to traditional services. Know and understand security groups, network ACLs, identity and access management. Understand the differences between users, groups, roles, and security policies and when each should be used. Now, on to the AWS specific concepts that you should understand. Designing and deploying scalable, highly available, and fault-tolerant systems on AWS. Make sure that you understand the differences between high availability and fault tolerance. Recognize the need and concepts of building elastic environments using the AWS auto-scaling services. The lift and shift of an existing on-premise application to AWS. Be able to recognize the advantages and disadvantages of simply lifting an existing application into AWS. Understand the ingress and egress of data to and from AWS. Understand the different mechanisms for transferring data to and from AWS. These would include the internet, VPN connections, AWS Direct Connect, and Import-Export Snowball. Understand how the different mechanisms can affect costs. Selecting the appropriate AWS service based on data, compute, database, and security requirements. Once again, there is no substitute for knowing the AWS services and the capabilities that they can provide. You should be able to select a specific service or technology based on the needs of the specific application requirements. Identifying appropriate use of AWS architectural best practices. Know and understand concepts such as the principle of least privilege for user access and how you might be able to use a specific service's capabilities to meet strict compliance guidelines. And estimating AWS costs and identifying cost control mechanisms. Know and understand how pricing works in AWS. Know the different pricing models for EC2, such as on-demand, reserved instances, and spot pricing, and when it might be appropriate to use each one. In addition, understand how service limits work in AWS and how you can use the different reporting tools, tags, and CloudWatch to keep an eye on your overall AWS spending. So how are the two exams different from each other? The overall exam questions themselves are very similar. However, it's the structure of the exams where the differences can really be seen. First, let's take a look at the previous exam. This exam consisted of 55 questions, and you were given 80 minutes to complete the exam. The exam consisted of 4 curriculum domains. 60% of the exam was directly related to designing highly available, cost-efficient, fault-tolerant, and scalable systems. 10% consisted of implementation and deployment questions. 20% of the questions were related to data security, and the remaining 10% was all about troubleshooting. The new exam adds a few more questions but allows an extra 50 minutes for the exam. It consists of 65 questions, and you'll be given 130 minutes to complete the exam. As you can see, they've totally changed the domains for which the exam addresses, as well as the weighting for each category. The new exam blueprint includes 34% of the questions being about designing resilient architectures, 24% are about defining performant architectures, 26% are related to securing your applications and architectures, 10% are directly related to designing cost-optimized architectures, and the remaining 6% are about defining operationally excellent architectures. So how do you go about preparing for your exam? Everybody has different ways of learning, so what works for one person may not work for others. Choose the course of action that is most appropriate for you. Get training. Take a training course either in person or online. These could include self-paced e-learning solutions or sitting in an actual classroom or a virtual session with a live instructor. Pick the option that works best for your learning style and your situation. There are multiple providers that offer training for AWS, including Amazon. I've included links to several training resources in the comments section below, but this obviously isn't going to be an exhaustive list. Again, pick the one that works best for you. White papers and case studies. Before going to take the exam, there are at least 2 specific white papers that you want to read and be familiar with. I've included links to the specific white papers below, as well as a link to an AWS webpage where you can find more. The first of these white papers is Architecting for the Cloud, AWS Best Practices, dated February of 2016. This white paper provides architectural patterns and advice on how to design systems that are scalable, secure, reliable, high-performing, and cost-efficient. The second is the AWS Well-Architected Framework itself. It is an absolute requirement that you spend some time looking through this information, since the exam is built upon the 5 specific pillars of this framework. And last but not least, get some hands-on experience with AWS. If you haven't already done so, sign up for an AWS account and start using it. All new accounts at AWS include 12 months of free tier access, which will give you just enough resources to put your newly learned knowledge into practice with minimal cost. Just remember that when creating resources in the cloud, look for the free tier eligible badge so that you don't incur any unexpected charges. With your new account, build environments, work with them, break them, tear them down, and create their replacements. Use this environment to practice your newly found skills. And practice, practice, practice. There is absolutely no substitute for having real hands-on experience. No book, course, white paper, or YouTube video can prepare you for every possible scenario. Only by logging in and having these experiences directly are you going to get firsthand knowledge of what you can expect. And by the way, actual practice can be used to break the monotony of constant studying. So which exam should you take? With having 2 exams available at the same time, many people are confused about which one might be right for them. To effectively answer this question, we need to ask another question. What have you been studying and preparing for? If you've already begun preparing for the exam with the previous exam blueprint and materials, you may still take the old exam through August of 2018. Many of the existing training courses available have already updated their curriculum for the new exam in the past few months, since the exam change was previously announced and the exam was in beta. It is recommended that if you're about to begin your course of study or have just started, use the new materials and the exam blueprint to take the newer exam. Many people that have sat through the new exam have stated that they felt that the newer exam was actually easier, although your experience may vary. The choice of which exam to take is all yours, at least until August. We hope that this quick presentation has shed a little light on the new Certified Solutions Architect Associate exam and given you a little insight on what you can expect. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this video and comment below if you've got any additional questions that we might be able to help answer. We wish you luck on your certification journey, and be sure to subscribe to PartlyCloudy.tv for the latest in cloud-related tutorial and how-to videos. Until next time,